When I first moved into my tiny house, I didn't realize how exposed I would feel. Every sound was magnified, every window felt like a spotlight on me, and sharing the space with my teenage daughter made me wonder, how are we supposed to carve out our own private spaces? In this video, I'm going to share with you my 3 biggest privacy challenges and how I've solved them. Let's start with one of the biggest challenges, and that's noise. There's no escape. If someone's watching a show or on the phone or just moving around, you're gonna hear it. My house was delivered in January of 2021, so our first experience with tiny house living was right in the middle of a pandemic. I was working from home all day and my daughter was doing virtual high school all day in her junior year. So if I was on a Zoom call and she was in class at the same time, we could totally hear each other. It was very distracting. So the very first investment we made was noise canceling headphones. I can't even tell you what a huge difference these made. Even if we weren't working and we just wanted to read a book or do something without hearing what the other person was doing, this canceled out everything else and helped us each focus on what we were trying to do. So whether you're working from home or you have kids and you're just trying to drown out some of the noise so that you can focus or just have a little bit more peace of mind, I highly recommend having either a good noise canceling headphone or even Apple AirPods do the trick for us. But I have to say, these Sony headphones really are superior when it comes to blocking out the noise. When you're trying to live in a space where there are no walls, headphones are a great way to create some personal space. Outside of just normal sounds in my tiny house, the one thing that no one prepared me for was the extremely aggressive spin cycle on my washer dryer combo. If the spin cycle is going and I'm trying to watch TV or make a phone call or even hear someone knocking on the door, the spin cycle is so aggressive, it will block all of those things out. And for that reason, I highly suggest you put your washer dryer behind a door. When I was still working on the design of my space, I saw a lot of other tiny houses with the washer dryer in the kitchen. And I thought that actually makes a lot of sense because I'm probably going to be folding clothes in that area. But I am so glad that my architect put my washer dryer behind a closed door. Having the door here means I can also do laundry at night without all of the noise, but there still is quite a bit of shaking going on. So if you're gonna get a washer dryer like this, just be prepared, especially if you have like a baby trying to sleep or a pet that might go extra crazy when the spin cycle starts. Definitely think about putting it behind a door. Another thing I wanted when I planned my space was a bit of a bathroom buffer. I didn't want my bathroom to be right next to my dining room table or right next to my living room, where if someone else is hanging out here and I'm in the bathroom, they can't hear every noise that's happening in there. And for the most part, when this door is closed, you really can't hear anything. I've even had my kids come in late at night, and when they closed this door, they took a shower and I couldn't even hear them from my loft right above the bathroom. But all the same, I still really like having the bathroom separate from most of the living areas in the house. And if you're ever visiting me and you're concerned about who can hear what's happening in the bathroom, I have a hidden Google Nest speaker, and all you have to do is say, play disco music or whatever you want it to play, and it will create that extra sound buffer to give you that little bit more privacy while you're in there. And of course, it's not just about what's happening inside. Privacy also depends on what's happening just outside your windows. Let's talk about neighbors. Have you seen those tiny houses that have the big, cool, circular windows? In theory, those seem very cool, but if that's your main source of light on one side of your house and you are in a backyard setting or you're living where someone can see into your house, you're gonna end up covering that really cool window with a curtain for privacy, which is not only going to kill the design vibe, but also block most of your light. The first night I spent in this house, I felt like every neighbor around here could see every movement I was making in this house. Most of my windows are pretty standard size. So after that first night, I went straight out and got window coverings for any of the windows where I felt like people could actually see what I was doing in here. And I focused on curtains that were thick enough to give me that privacy, but sheer enough to still let the light through. And when I say curtains, this tall window and my French doors are covered with shower curtains. My kitchen window with dish towels and my upper windows are just pillowcases. Don't be afraid to get creative. You can turn anything into a curtain with inexpensive tension rods and curtain rings. One of the things I love most about this tiny house is the amount of light that does get in. I have 14 windows, 4 skylights, and 2 French doors. And so even if I have all of these lower windows covered for privacy, I still get a massive amount of light coming in from my skylights and upper windows. And while we're talking about neighbors, I just want to point out that I currently rent a space on someone else's land. And so from time to time, some of that noise I talked about comes from my landlord. A couple of years ago when I was interviewing for jobs a lot, I would be starting a Zoom interview and suddenly they would fire up a tractor right outside my window, and it sounds like it's inside my house at that point. So I learned from that point on, if I ever had a very important phone call or something like that where I really needed to not have a tractor on the other side of my wall, I would just let them know, hey, I have an interview at 1 o'clock tomorrow. It shouldn't last more than 20 minutes. Just in case you're planning to fire up the tractor, maybe don't do it in that window. And they've never been offended when I ask them things like that. So sometimes the solution to your privacy problems aren't solved by technology or curtains. They rely on good old-fashioned communication. Speaking of neighbors, I do have one of those neighbors who is super nice and they're fairly quiet, but they have some kind of landscaping business and they have a lot of trucks and they have a lot of guys out there every morning doing stuff. And needless to say, it's not the kind of vibe I want to see out my kitchen window, and I don't want them to see me in here. And the problem with this long skinny window is that it's really a horrible size to put a curtain on. So for this window, my bathroom, and my living room, I got this sheer vinyl window covering. You basically just measure and cut to the size of your window and you just squeegee it right on. It's very affordable, it lets in a ton of light, and it's super easy to put on. Noise and neighbors are definitely a big part of the equation, but I think the biggest thing that most people think about when they think of privacy in a tiny home is where and what time you're all gonna go to sleep. Because chances are, if one of you has to get up early to be somewhere, pretty much everyone is gonna be going to bed early the night before. A great example of this is I came home once on a Friday night and I was just in the mood to bake cookies. So I went to the grocery store and I got all the things that I needed. And when I came back, my daughter's car was here, but all of the lights were just off. And I walk into this house that is pitch black with all of my crinkly bags, try to set them down quietly, and I hear my daughter go, "Mom, I have to open Smoothie King at 6 a.m. So I was like, sorry. And I had to, as quietly as possible, put all of my crinkly bags and ingredients away. One of the biggest issues with privacy is that when you have a loft in a tiny house, you're not going to have a door on it, and that is by design. We do not have a central air unit with ducts that go into each room that allow you to close your door but still get nice fresh air. All of the air in this tiny house, whether it's cold or hot, is all being generated by my mini split. And so the air is coming from that point to every space in this house. And a lot of lofts that you might see in other tiny homes are completely open. They have a full view of what's below, and whoever's below has a full view of what's in the loft. I definitely did not want that level of openness. In fact, I actually worked with my builder and had them go as high as possible with these loft walls so that I still had airflow but a decent amount of privacy. And both of these privacy walls have cubbies built in where we have clothes and books and things that are really creating a good buffer for sound once you're up here. But because it is open concept, you want to be mindful of not making a lot of noise when the other person goes to bed and not having lights on when the other person goes to bed. When we first moved in here, my daughter would say goodnight, go to bed. I would have my lamp on, I'd be reading a book, and 30 minutes in, she would say, Mom, when are you turning off your light? So now, especially if she's going to be here, I only read books on my Kindle, so I can turn off my lamp, but it has that nice backlight so I can see what I'm doing. And on top of that, I also have smart bulbs in all of my lamps in the house. That lets me dim my lights to a lower setting so that when my daughter or a guest is sleeping on the other side, it's not as disruptive to them. And if you don't have smart light bulbs, just throw a scarf over the lamp. It makes a huge difference. Little adjustments like this really go a long way in respecting everyone's sleep space. I also have a little Google Nest speaker right here next to my bed. And every night when I'm ready to go to sleep, I just ask it to play white noise. Even if my daughter gets up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, I really can't hear it. But in the beginning, it wasn't the sound that would wake me up, but the house shaking every time she went to the bathroom. She was like, "Mom, I swear I'm tiptoeing all the way to the bathroom." And so I was like, show me what that looks like. I'm gonna do a reenactment for you. This is what it looked like. It literally was shaking the entire house. So I was just like, "Parker, just walk normally." And believe it or not, that solved the problem. One of the things I love about both of these lofts is that they have this great built-in skylight that lets in a ton of light, and it really just makes the space feel bigger. But when the sun comes in here at 5 a.m., it really is no fun at all. So when I first moved in, I just put like a pillowcase up here to block most of that light out. But a couple of years ago, we had a massive hailstorm here. I'm talking 1-inch hail for over an hour. I have a metal roof, and it sounded like asteroids hitting this tiny house. My insurance company actually ended up replacing my roof and all of my skylights. And when they did that, I took the opportunity to upgrade these windows so they have the built-in remote blinds, just like the ones in my kitchen. And of course, the budget solution, if you don't have remote blinds or window coverings up yet, is just to get a really nice eye mask. This one actually has this raised puffy border around my eyes, so it truly blocks out all of the light and I get great sleep. Privacy in my tiny house is always going to be an issue, but with a little creativity and thoughtfulness for the people that I'm sharing the space with, it is possible to coexist peacefully. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.